I never thought I'd be the kind of husband who checks his wife's phone. Yet here I am, sitting in our dimly lit kitchen at 2 a.m., staring at Megan's unlocked screen while she sleeps upstairs. The soft blue glow illuminates my guilt-ridden face as I scroll through her recent messages. I feel sick to my stomach, but I can't stop. Something's different about her. Has been for weeks now, and it all started with that damn yoga class. I should probably back up a bit. My name's David, and until 3 months ago, I had what most people would call a perfectly normal marriage. Megan and I met in college, dated for 4 years, and tied the knot in a small ceremony, surrounded by family and friends. We settled into a comfortable routine. Morning coffee together, date nights every Friday, lazy Sunday brunches with crossword puzzles. Sure, maybe we weren't setting the world on fire with passion anymore, but we were happy. At least I thought we were. Then came the day Megan announced she wanted to try yoga. For stress relief, she said, her green eyes sparkling with excitement. Sarah from accounting says it's life-changing. I encouraged her, of course. Why wouldn't I? Exercise, flexibility, mindfulness, all good things, right? The studio was just a few blocks from our house, and the evening classes fit perfectly with her work schedule. The first few weeks were exactly what you'd expect. Megan came home energized, talking about downward dogs and warrior poses. She bought a fancy mat and started wearing those trendy yoga pants everywhere. I even noticed she seemed more relaxed, less caught up in work drama. But then something shifted. It started with the name Ravi dropping into our conversations. At first, just casual mentions. Ravi showed us this amazing breathing technique today, or Ravi says we carry our stress in our hips. But soon, every other sentence began with Ravi says. Ravi this, Ravi that. Ravi, the new instructor who'd taken over the advanced class. Ravi, who'd studied with monks in India. Ravi, who could apparently solve all of life's problems through the power of proper alignment and cosmic energy. I tried to be supportive, really, but when Megan started replacing our regular dinner recipes with quinoa bowls and raw vegetables because Ravi says it helps align our chakras, I felt the first real twinge of concern. When she began spending hours watching YouTube videos about meditation and energy healing, that twinge grew into a persistent knot in my stomach. Last week, she mentioned something about a weekend retreat. It's a special invitation-only event, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. Ravi only offers it to his most dedicated students. The way she said his name, soft, almost reverent, made my skin crawl. Which brings me back to this moment, sitting in our kitchen, illuminated by the glow of her phone. I know I shouldn't be doing this. Trust is sacred in a marriage, and here I am, violating it. But the messages I'm finding aren't what I expected. No flirtatious texts, no hidden photos. Instead, there's a group chat filled with bizarre discussions about ascending to higher consciousness and breaking free from the material plane. Megan's messages are enthusiastic, peppered with words like enlightenment and spiritual awakening. I closed the phone and put it back exactly where I found it, feeling simultaneously relieved and more worried than ever. No, Megan isn't having an affair, at least not in the traditional sense. But as I climb the stairs back to our bedroom, watching her peaceful sleeping form, I can't shake the feeling that I'm losing her to something I don't understand. Something that calls itself spirituality, but feels more like madness. Tomorrow I'll call Kyle. If anyone can help me make sense of this, it's my true crime-obsessed best friend. For now, though, I slide back into bed beside my wife, listening to her steady breathing and wondering when our normal life began slipping away and what exactly this Ravi person is really teaching behind those studio doors. Kyle's apartment always smells like coffee and conspiracy theories. As I sink into his worn leather couch, surrounded by cork boards covered in newspaper clippings and red string, I realize how desperate I must look coming here. But desperate times call for desperate measures, and Kyle's peculiar hobby of investigating local mysteries might actually be useful for once. So let me get this straight, Kyle says, pacing in front of his evidence wall, coffee mug in hand. Your wife joins a yoga class, meets this guru guy Ravi, and suddenly she's a different person? His eyes light up the way they do when he catches the scent of a good mystery. I watch steam rise from my untouched coffee. It's not just the yoga. Yesterday, I found her meditating at 4 in the morning, surrounded by crystals she bought online. She said something about aligning her energy field before work. The memory of finding her cross-legged on our living room floor, bathed in candlelight, still unsettles me. She's never been interested in this stuff before. Kyle pulls out his laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. What's the name of the studio? Inner Light Yoga and Spiritual Wellness. I reply, the words leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. It used to be just plain Jane yoga until Ravi showed up 3 months ago. Interesting. Kyle's face is illuminated by the screen's blue glow. The business registration changed hands around that time. Previous owners sold it for a surprisingly high amount. He squints at the screen, and our friend Ravi, no last name on any of the documentation. Just Ravi, spiritual guide and master practitioner. My stomach tightens. What are you thinking? Could be nothing, Kyle says, but his tone suggests otherwise. But I've seen similar patterns before. Charismatic leader, rapid lifestyle changes, isolation from previous social circles. He trails off, letting the implications hang in the air. Megan's not in a cult. I snap, more sharply than intended. But even as I say it, doubt gnaws at me. Last night's dinner conversation replays in my mind. Megan explaining how Ravi taught them about transcending earthly attachments and finding their true spiritual partners. Look, Kyle sets down his coffee, his expression serious. I'm not saying it's definitely a cult, but something's off here. These weekend retreats she mentioned. When's the next one? 2 weeks from now. Some place called Serenity Grove Sanctuary, about an hour outside the city. Kyle's already typing again. Interesting. Property was purchased 6 months ago by a shell corporation. No website, no social media presence, just a private Facebook group you need an invitation to join. He looks up at me. Want to do some recon? Part of me wants to say no, to go home and trust that my wife knows what she's doing. But then I remember this morning. Megan leaving for work without our usual goodbye kiss, her mind somewhere else entirely. She'd been wearing a strange pendant Ravi gave her. Something about protection from negative energies. What kind of recon? I ask, already knowing I'll say yes. Kyle grins, reaching for a fresh notebook. The studio offers beginner classes, right? Time for us to get spiritual, my friend. That's how I find myself, 24 hours later, walking into Inner Light Yoga, wearing borrowed yoga pants and carrying a brand new mat. The studio's walls are covered in mandala tapestries and quotes about enlightenment. Incense smoke hangs thick in the air, making my eyes water. The class isn't taught by Ravi. He only handles advanced students now, but by a woman named Luna, who keeps talking about opening our heart chakras to universal love. I try to focus on the poses, but my attention keeps drifting to the photos on the wall. Ravi features prominently in many of them, always surrounded by adoring students. In every shot, he's wearing flowing white clothes and a serene smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. After class, while pretending to admire the crystal display in the lobby, I overhear 2 women talking about the upcoming retreat. Ravi says this one will be transformative. One whispers excitedly. He's planning something special for the midnight ceremony. On the drive home, Kyle's practically buzzing with theories. Midnight ceremonies? Crystal healing? Mysterious property purchases? Classic signs of, don't say cult. I interrupt, gripping the steering wheel tighter. Megan's too smart for that. Kyle falls silent for a moment. You know what the scariest thing about these situations is? He finally says. It's often the smartest people who fall deepest. They think they're too intelligent to be manipulated, so they don't see it happening. I park in front of my house, seeing lights on upstairs. Megan's home early from her evening class. What's our next move? I ask. We need to get into that retreat, Kyle says. Something big is happening there, and we need to find out what. As I watch him drive away, I stand in my driveway, torn between going inside to my wife and following Kyle down this rabbit hole. The pendant Megan's been wearing catches the porch light as she passes by an upstairs window, and I make my decision. Whatever's happening at Serenity Grove Sanctuary, I need to know the truth. I just hope I'm ready for what we might find. Marriage is built on thousands of tiny moments, shared glances over morning coffee, fingers brushing while passing the remote, synchronized sighs at the end of a long day. It's these moments that make up the fabric of a relationship. and it's their absence that hollows out your heart when they start disappearing. I notice it most in the evenings now. Megan used to curl up next to me on the couch, her feet tucked under my legs as we watched our favorite shows. These days, she sits cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, beads wrapped around her wrists, mumbling mantras I don't understand. When I ask what they mean, she gives me that new smile, distant and pitying, as if I'm a child who couldn't possibly comprehend the depths of her spiritual awakening. "You could join me," she says, but her tone suggests she already knows I won't. Ravi says the greatest barrier to enlightenment is attachment to our old ways of being. The way she says his name makes my chest ache, not with jealousy exactly, but with something deeper, the pain of watching someone you love slip away into a reality you can't access. Kyle and I spend our lunch breaks planning our infiltration of the retreat. He's managed to get his hands on the registration form through one of his mysterious sources. The retreat costs an eye-watering amount of money, which only feeds Kyle's theories about what's really going on. "Look at these requirements," he says, spreading papers across his desk. "Participants must surrender all electronic devices upon arrival. No outside food or drinks allowed. Required purchase of special ceremonial attire at $300 per set." I scan the documents, my stomach churning. Megan's already bought her outfit. She showed me last night, all white, flowing fabric. She said it's designed to enhance her spiritual frequency. Kyle leans back, running his hands through his disheveled hair. We need to get in there, but they're checking references. Everyone needs to be vouched for by an existing member. That evening, I come home to find Megan burning sage in our bedroom. The familiar scent of our laundry detergent is overwhelmed by sharp, herbal smoke. Our photos have been removed from the walls, replaced by tapestries covered in geometric patterns. She's rearranging crystals on what used to be my bedside table. The energy was stagnant, she explains without looking at me. Ravi showed us how to cleanse our personal spaces of negative vibrations. She places a large amethyst where my alarm clock used to be. "You've been carrying a lot of dense energy lately. I can see it in your aura." I want to shake her, to demand she look at me, really look at me, the way she used to. Instead, I ask, "Are you excited about the retreat?" Her face lights up, but it's not the warm glow I remember. There's something feverish in her enthusiasm. Ravi says this gathering will be transformative. We're going to participate in ancient rituals that haven't been performed in centuries. He says some of us might even experience divine revelation. I watch her arrange her new white outfit on our bed, smoothing the fabric with reverent hands. "It sounds intense," I say carefully. "Any chance there's still space for another participant? I've been thinking maybe I should try to understand what you're experiencing." The look she gives me is complicated. Hope mixed with suspicion, longing tangled with doubt. "Really? You want to come?" Her hand's still on the white fabric. I'd have to ask Ravi. He's very particular about the energy of the group. "I just want to be part of your journey," I say, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. But isn't that also the truth? Isn't that exactly what I'm trying to do? Stay connected to my wife as she ventures into this strange new world? She promises to ask him at tomorrow's advanced class. After she falls asleep, I text Kyle, "Might have our way in. Megan's asking Ravi tomorrow." His response comes immediately. "Perfect. But be careful. If he's as intuitive as they say he is, he'll be watching for any sign you're not genuine." I lie awake, listening to Megan's breathing. It's different now, slower, more deliberate, like even her unconscious patterns have been reprogrammed. The moonlight filtering through our bedroom window catches the crystals she's placed everywhere, casting strange shadows on our walls. In the darkness, they look like eyes watching us sleep. Tomorrow, I'll find out if Ravi will allow me into his inner circle. As I drift off, I remember how Megan and I used to laugh at stories about cults and spiritual scams. "How could anyone fall for that?" we'd say. Now, in the quiet hours of night, I wonder if anyone really sees the trap until they're already caught in it. The crystal on my bedside table gleams in the darkness, and I swear I can feel it judging me. Or maybe that's just my guilt, knowing I'm about to infiltrate this sacred space Megan's found, hunting for evidence of something sinister. What happens if I find nothing? Worse yet, what happens if I find exactly what Kyle suspects? Sleep doesn't come easily anymore. Not since the mantras replaced our good night kisses, and meditation replaced our morning conversations. Not since my wife became a stranger who looks at me with eyes that seem to see something or someone else entirely. Meeting Ravi feels like staring into a mirror that shows you everything you're not. He sits cross-legged on a purple cushion in his private consultation room, wearing flowing white linen that somehow doesn't wrinkle. His presence fills the space like incense smoke, subtle yet overwhelming. I perch awkwardly on my own cushion, aware of every imperfect angle of my body, every mundane thread of my business casual attire. Megan tells me you've had a spiritual awakening, he says, his accent a gentle blend of Eastern wisdom and Western polish. His dark eyes seem to pierce through my carefully constructed facade, reading the doubt beneath my eager smile. I remember Kyle's coaching. Don't try too hard to seem convinced. New seekers should be uncertain but open. So I let my real anxiety show through, masquerading as spiritual uncertainty. I've been watching Megan's transformation. I say, the truth making my lies more convincing. She seems to have found something profound here. Ravi's lips curve into a knowing smile. And you wish to understand what has touched her soul so deeply? He leans forward slightly, and I catch a whiff of sandalwood. Or perhaps you wish to reclaim what you feel you're losing? The question hits too close to home. I feel my carefully prepared script crumbling under his gaze. I just want to understand. I manage, the words catching in my throat. Understanding begins with honesty, he says, reaching for a crystal, singing bowl beside him. First, with ourselves. He strikes the bowl gently, and a pure tone fills the room, vibrating in my chest. Close your eyes. Tell me what you feel. I want to resist, to maintain some distance, but his voice carries an authority that makes disobedience feel impossible. I close my eyes. What do you see when you look at your wife now? He asks, the bowl's resonance underlining his words. Images flood my mind. Megan's face illuminated by candlelight during her morning meditations, her expression more peaceful than I've seen in years. The gentle way she touches her crystals, as if they hold answers I can't provide. The distant look in her eyes when she speaks of spiritual awakening. I see someone becoming a stranger. I whisper, the truth slipping out before I can catch it. The bowl's tone fades. And this frightens you? Yes. My eyes remain closed, tears threatening behind the lids. Fear, Ravi says softly, is the gateway to transformation. Only by walking through our deepest fears can we find our truest selves. A pause, heavy with significance. Megan walked through her fears. She feared the emptiness of a life lived on the surface. She feared the spiritual death of routine. She feared never knowing her highest purpose. My eyes snap open, a surge of defensive anger rising. Those weren't Megan's fears. They were his words in her mouth. But when I meet his gaze, the argument dies on my lips. There's something in those dark eyes that makes me doubt my own certainty. The retreat, he continues, studying my face, is not for casual seekers. It is for those ready to break free from their earthly tethers, to transcend the limitations of their former selves. He places a crystal in my palm. Rose quartz, I recognize it from Megan's growing collection. Are you prepared to let go of who you think you are? The crystal feels warm against my skin. I think of Megan upstairs in her advanced class, probably hoping I'll be accepted into this inner circle. I think of Kyle waiting for my report, his conspiracy boards growing more complex by the day. I think of my marriage dissolving like mist in the morning sun. I'm ready, I say, and for a moment, I almost believe it myself. Ravi's smile deepens. Then you may join us at Serenity Grove. But remember, the path to enlightenment requires complete surrender. No phones, no distractions, no connections to your old life. Only then can you be truly reborn. As I leave the studio, clutching my retreat registration forms, I feel unclean, as if I've corrupted something genuine with my deception. But when I see Megan waiting in the lobby, her face glowing with joy at my acceptance, I almost forget why I came. We can walk the path together now, she says, hugging me with an intensity one haven't felt in months. Over her shoulder, I see Ravi watching us from his doorway. Our eyes meet, and in that moment, I'm certain of two things. He knows exactly why I'm really here, and he's going to let me come anyway. The question is why? The week before the retreat feels like preparing for a role in a play where I don't know my lines. Every morning, Megan guides me through meditation sessions, her voice soft and encouraging as she teaches me to open my chakras. Her hands occasionally brush my shoulders, adjusting my posture, and each touch carries an echo of intimacy we've lost. Familiar, yet somehow foreign. Your energy is shifting, she tells me one morning, her green eyes studying me with an intensity that makes me wonder if she can see through my pretense. There's still resistance, but Ravi says that's normal at the beginning of the journey. Kyle's apartment has become our war room. Maps of Serenity Grove Sanctuary cover his walls, satellite images showing a sprawling property with several outbuildings clustered around a central lodge. He's created detailed profiles of every instructor and regular member he could track down, their faces connected by red string to various suspicious incidents. You need to memorize these mantras, he says, handing me a stack of note cards. They'll expect you to know them at the retreat. His enthusiasm would be almost comical if it didn't feel like we were planning a military operation. And remember, if anything feels off, we have the emergency signal worked out. But as I practice the Sanskrit phrases in our bathroom mirror, watching my lips form unfamiliar words, something unexpected happens. The mantras begin to feel less like props and more like keys unlocking doors I didn't know existed. Sometimes, in the quiet moments between breaths, I catch glimpses of what Megan might have found here, a stillness that makes our old life seem shallow and noisy. 3 days before the retreat, Megan and I participate in a preparation ceremony at the studio. The room is dark except for candlelight, the air thick with sage and copal. 20 of us sit in a circle, passing a talking stick made of crystal and copper. Each person shares their intentions for the upcoming transformation. When the stick reaches Megan, her voice trembles with emotion. I seek to transcend the limitations of my earthly attachments, she says, and though she doesn't look at me, I feel the weight of her words. To find my true spiritual family. The stick feels cool in my palm when it's my turn. I plan to recite one of the practice phrases Kyle and I worked on, but something else comes out instead. I seek understanding, I say, surprising myself with my honesty. Of myself, of others. My voice catches, of why we lose the things we thought would last forever. Later that night, I find Megan crying in our bedroom. She's arranging her retreat clothing, all white, delicate as wedding garments, and her tears fall silently onto the fabric. When I touch her shoulder, she doesn't pull away. They're happy tears, she whispers, but there's something else in her voice. Fear? Doubt? Ravi says that deep transformation often brings emotional release, that we have to be willing to let go of everything we think we are. I sit beside her, breathing in the now familiar scent of her sandalwood perfume. What if who you are is beautiful already? She turns to me, her face ethereal in the crystal-scattered moonlight. That's your attachment speaking. Her hand finds mine, but her touch feels like a goodbye. At the retreat, you'll understand. Ravi says we're all on the verge of something magnificent. That night, I lie awake watching her sleep, remembering how we used to talk about our future, kids' names, dream houses, growing old together. Now our future seems to extend only as far as this upcoming weekend, beyond which lies an unknowable void that Ravi calls transformation, but that feels more like freefall. I check my phone one last time before bed. Kyle has sent another message. Final briefing tomorrow. Don't let your guard down just because you're feeling the pull. That's how they get you. But as I set the phone aside, watching moonlight play across Megan's peaceful face, I wonder who's really getting who. Am I infiltrating their spiritual circle, or am I being drawn into it despite myself? The mantras echo in my head as I drift off to sleep, their ancient syllables carrying promises I can't quite understand, but can't entirely dismiss. In my dreams, Ravi's knowing smile follows me through endless corridors of mirrors, each reflection showing a different version of myself. The skeptic, the seeker, the loving husband, the desperate spy. All of them real, all of them false, all of them dissolving into white light and Sanskrit whispers. Serenity Grove's sanctuary emerges from the morning mist like a fever dream. The gravel crunches under our tires as we follow the winding path through ancient oaks dripping with Spanish moss. Beside me, Megan's fingers drum an excited rhythm on her knee, her wedding ring catching the filtered sunlight. I notice she's wearing it on her right hand now, a detail that sends a quiet tremor through my chest. The main building is a restored Victorian mansion, its white paint gleaming against the gray sky. Crystal wind chimes sing from every porch corner, their music mixing with birdsong in an otherworldly symphony. As we park, I spot Kyle's car already in the lot, carefully positioned to observe the main entrance. We'd practiced our protocol, acknowledge each other as strangers, maintain separate cover stories, share intelligence only during designated bathroom breaks. A young woman in flowing white greets us at the entrance, her smile serene but her eyes sharp. "Welcome to Transformation," she says, holding out 2 white fabric bags. All earthly possessions must be surrendered before crossing the threshold. Phones, watches, jewelry, anything that tethers you to your old life. Megan eagerly drops her phone and watch into the bag. I follow more hesitantly, my fingers lingering on my wedding ring. The woman, her name tag reads Dawn, notices my reluctance. "The physical symbols of our attachments often hold the strongest energy blocks," she says softly. Ravi teaches that true liberation requires complete surrender. As I slide the ring off, I feel Megan's eyes on me. There's approval in her gaze, but something else too. A flicker of what might be sadness, quickly masked by spiritual determination. My ring makes a soft clicking sound as it falls into the bag, like a key turning in a lock. Inside, the mansion's Victorian grandeur has been transformed into a spiritual wonderland. Mandala tapestries cover the original wallpaper, and the air is thick with incense. We're led to separate dormitories, men and women apart for the first phase of the retreat. The room I'm assigned to holds 6 simple beds with white linens. Kyle is already there, pretending to struggle with his meditation cushion. Remember, Dawn tells us as she leaves, dinner is at sunset. Until then, silence is encouraged for inner reflection. Hours pass like honey dripping from a jar, slow and golden. Without my phone, time becomes fluid, measured only by the changing angles of light through the windows. I try to meditate, remembering Megan's lessons, but my mind keeps spinning elaborate scenarios of what might be happening in the women's wing. At sunset, a gong draws us to dinner. The dining hall is set with low tables, cushions instead of chairs. Megan sits across the room, and the sight of her stops my breath. Something has already changed in her, a luminosity to her skin, an otherworldly quality to her movements. She catches my eye and smiles, but it's the kind of smile you might give a beloved childhood toy you've outgrown. Ravi appears as we finish our vegetarian meal, his white robes somehow glowing in the candlelight. "Tonight," he announces, his voice carrying to every corner of the room, "we begin the journey of unbinding. Each of you carries chains you cannot see, expectations, memories, identities that no longer serve your highest purpose." He moves through the room like smoke, touching shoulders, meeting eyes. When he reaches me, his hand rests on my crown for a moment longer than the others. "Some of you carry heavier chains than most," he says, though whether he's speaking to me or the room, I can't tell. "Some of you think you're here to find answers, when really, you're here to lose questions." The evening dissolves into a ceremony I struggle to follow. We're arranged in concentric circles, chanting mantras that seem to shift and change with each repetition. Incense burns in copper bowls, and something about the smoke makes the room's edges blur. I try to maintain my investigative focus, to memorize details for Kyle, but reality keeps slipping sideways. At one point, I look across the circle and see Megan with her eyes closed, swaying to the chants. Tears stream down her face, but she's smiling. The candlelight plays tricks, making her appear transparent, as if she's already halfway transformed into something non-physical. Let go. Ravi's voice weaves through the chanting. Let go of who you were. Let go of who you think you should be. Let go of the stories you tell yourself about love, about truth, about reality itself. In the corner of my eye, I see Kyle taking mental notes, his meditation pose not quite perfect, but something is happening to me that I hadn't planned for. The chants are working their way into my blood. The incense is unlocking doors in my mind I didn't know existed. I find myself swaying, my skepticism melting like wax down the sides of the countless candles. When the ceremony ends, we're instructed to return to our rooms in silence. As I pass Megan in the hallway, our fingers brush. The touch sends an electric shock through my arm, but it feels foreign, like touching a stranger who wears your lover's face. In bed, listening to the other men's breathing slow and asleep, I try to gather my thoughts for tomorrow's meeting with Kyle. But the thoughts scatter like birds, leaving only fragments. The way Megan's hands moved through the incense smoke, the resonance of the chants in my chest, Ravi's knowing eyes as he touched my head. The last thing I see before sleep takes me is moonlight catching the crystal wind chimes outside our window. They spin slowly, casting scattered rainbow light across the ceiling, and for a moment, I could swear they're spelling out messages in a language I'm just beginning to understand. Dawn breaks differently at Serenity Grove, the light seeming to bend around corners it shouldn't reach. I wake to find my fellow retreatants already gone from their beds, leaving behind only rumpled white sheets and lingering traces of sandalwood. The silence feels alive, breathing with possibilities and secrets. In the communal bathroom, I catch Kyle's eye in the mirror. The dark circles under his eyes match mine. Neither of us slept well. He makes a subtle gesture toward the small notebook hidden in his toiletry bag, but something stops me from acknowledging it. The person I was yesterday, the investigator, the suspicious husband, feels like a character in a story I once read. The morning session begins with breathing exercises that make the room spin. Ravi moves among us, his white robes catching the light streaming through stained glass windows. Your resistance is surfacing, he says, his voice seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. Feel it rise like smoke from a dying fire. Let it disperse into the infinite. Megan sits 3 circles away from me, but I feel her presence like a phantom limb. She's wearing the ceremonial white dress now, her hair pulled back to reveal the elegant line of her neck. I remember kissing that neck on our wedding day, but the memory feels borrowed, as if it belongs to someone else. Today, Ravi announces, we begin the separation of essence from illusion. His dark eyes find mine. Some of you came seeking truth while carrying deception in your hearts. But the universe has its own way of revealing what must be known. The day unfolds in a series of ceremonies I can't quite grasp. We're led through meditation sessions that last hours or minutes. Time has lost all meaning without phones or watches. The incense smoke writes messages in the air that dissolve before I can read them. At some point, I realize I've forgotten the secret signals Kyle and I established. During the afternoon ritual, something shifts. We're arranged in pairs, facing each other, instructed to look into our partner's eyes without blinking. I'm paired with a woman I've never met, but her eyes hold centuries of knowing. Minutes stretch into eternities as the boundaries between us blur. What do you see? Ravi's voice drifts through the haze. Everything, my partner whispers. Nothing. Her pupils are black holes, pulling me in. You're searching for something you're afraid to find. Somewhere across the room, I hear Megan's voice join a chant that sounds ancient and new at once. The sound wraps around my consciousness like silk threads, and suddenly I'm uncertain which memories are real and which are spiritual projections. During the dinner break, I stumble into Kyle in a deserted hallway. He grabs my arm, his grip anchoring me to what I thought was reality. We need to talk, he hisses. I've found something in the East Wing. Documents about property transfers, bank accounts in the Cayman Islands. This is bigger than we thought. But his words feel hollow, disconnected from the vibrating truth I can almost touch. Does it matter? I hear myself ask, not recognizing my own voice. What if this is real, Kyle? What if we're the ones who've been blind? He steps back, studying my face with growing alarm. They're getting to you, he says. This is exactly what they want. Remember why we're here. Remember Megan. Megan. Her name echoes in my chest like a bell tone. But when I picture her face, it's overlaid with thousands of other faces. Past lives, future possibilities, infinite versions of love and loss spinning through space. The evening ceremony begins with a purification ritual. We're given tea that tastes of starlight and forgotten dreams. Ravi speaks of quantum entanglement, of souls recognizing their true mirrors across time and space. Through the candlelight, I watch Megan sway to the rhythm of his words, her face transcendent with understanding. Tomorrow, Ravi tells us as the moon rises, we will cross the final threshold. Those who are ready will experience the ultimate unbinding. Those who are not, his gaze lingers on me, heavy with meaning, will face their deepest fears made manifest. In bed that night, the ceiling above me swirls with patterns that seem to contain all the answers I've been seeking. Kyle's evidence feels distant and irrelevant compared to the mysteries unfolding in my own consciousness. I think of Megan, somewhere in the women's wing, probably lying awake too, both of us suspended in this liminal space between who we were and who we're becoming. The crystal wind chimes outside my window, sing a melody that might be a warning or a welcome. As sleep claims me, I realize I'm no longer sure which would be worse, discovering this is all an elaborate scam, or accepting that it's genuinely transforming us into people who can no longer love each other in the simple, earthly way we once did. Truth arrives like dawn through stained glass, fractured, colored by what it passes through, beautiful and painful all at once. The revelation comes during what Ravi calls the midnight awakening. Though my inner clock, stripped of mechanical measures, has no way to verify the hour. We're gathered in the mansion's conservatory, where Victorian ironwork cradles panels of glass that reflect our candlelit faces back at us. The moon hangs full and heavy outside, casting long shadows that seem to dance with lives of their own. The air vibrates with anticipation and copal smoke. Ravi stands in the center of our circle, his white robes now adorned with threads of gold that catch the candlelight. Tonight, he says, we transcend the final illusion, the illusion of separate selves. His eyes meet mine with an intensity that makes my skin prickle. Some of you have been fighting this truth, clinging to old stories of possession and exclusivity. But love, in its highest form, knows no such boundaries. That's when I see it. The way Megan's hand trembles as she holds her ceremonial cup, the subtle shift of her body toward Ravi, the look that passes between them. It's not what I feared, not the crude physical betrayal I'd imagined. It's something both more subtle and more complete. Each of us, Ravi continues, carries within us the capacity for infinite love. But society has conditioned us to believe in scarcity, in the myth of the one true connection. His voice softens. Megan, would you share your awakening with the circle? She rises, luminous in her white dress, and I see her fully for the first time since this all began. There's no guilt in her face, no furtive glances or hidden shame. Instead, she radiates a certainty that breaks my heart more thoroughly than any confession of infidelity could. I came here believing I was complete, she begins, her voice clear and strange. I had a husband, a home, a life that looked perfect from the outside. But inside, there was a hollow space that echoed with questions I was afraid to ask. Her eyes find mine across the circle. David, you filled every space you knew how to fill. You loved me completely, within the boundaries we were taught to accept. The room holds its breath. Even Kyle, somewhere in the circle, has stopped taking mental notes. But Ravi showed me that true love isn't about filling spaces or possessing hearts. It's about expanding beyond the boundaries of self. She turns to Ravi, and the look they share isn't passionate or lustful. It's something worse. Recognition. He awakened in me a capacity for love that transcends the physical, the mundane. Yes, there is love between us, but not the kind that betrays or diminishes. It multiplies, expands, encompasses all. Ravi steps forward, taking both our hands in his. The touch sends a current through my arm that makes reality shimmer. "David," he says softly, "you came here seeking evidence of betrayal, but found instead the limits of your own understanding of love. The real question is not whether Megan has been unfaithful, but whether your definition of faithfulness has room for the infinite." And suddenly I see it all. The careful construction of this moment. The way he's orchestrated every step of our journey. Not toward a physical affair, but toward something more insidious. The dissolution of all boundaries, all exclusive bonds. In his philosophy, my marriage to Megan isn't being destroyed by infidelity, but transcended into something larger, less definite, less mine. "The pain you feel," he continues, reading my thoughts, "is the death of the ego's claim to exclusive love. But from this death, a greater love can be born. One that includes all connections, all bonds, all forms of spiritual intimacy." Megan kneels beside me, her familiar hand finding mine. "I haven't stopped loving you," she whispers. "I've just expanded beyond the limits of what we thought love could be. You can too. We can share this awakening, this infinite capacity for connection." The candles flicker, casting shadows that seem to take the shape of every fear I've ever had. In the corner of my vision, I see Kyle start to rise, probably ready to expose whatever financial schemes he's uncovered. But in this moment, ledgers and bank accounts seem trivial compared to the sophisticated dissolution of everything I thought I knew about love and commitment. Because the truth is both simpler and more devastating than anything we'd suspected. Ravi hasn't seduced my wife's body. He's transformed her understanding of what love and fidelity mean. And as I look around the circle at the other faces, glowing with recognition and yearning, I realize this is his true power. Not the crude manipulation we'd feared, but the elegant redefinition of love itself into something so vast and boundless that marriage becomes merely a quaint limitation to transcend. The crystal chimes sing in the night breeze, and I feel the foundations of my world shift like sand beneath an incoming tide. Somewhere in the darkness, my wedding ring lies in a white fabric bag, no longer a symbol of exclusive devotion, but a relic of what Ravi calls our unawakened understanding of love. Megan's hand is still in mine, warm and familiar, but it no longer feels like something I can hold on to. She has become like light, present everywhere, belonging nowhere, impossible to possess. And in the candlelight, I see tears on her cheeks that mirror my own, as we both recognize that some transformations, once begun, cannot be undone. Morning comes like a bruise spreading across the sky. I find myself wandering the mansion's gardens, where Victorian roses twist around modern crystal formations in an unlikely marriage of ages. The air holds the metallic taste of approaching rain, matching the storm building inside my chest. Memories surface like debris after a flood. Megan and me sharing coffee on Sunday mornings, her laugh echoing across our kitchen, the way her fingers would find mine in movie theaters without looking. Each recollection now feels like a photograph being slowly bleached by the sun, its colors fading into something unrecognizable. I find Kyle by the koi pond, his investigation notebook forgotten beside him. He looks up as I approach, and I see my own devastation mirrored in his face. "I was wrong," he says quietly. "I was looking for bank accounts and real estate fraud. But this..." He gestures helplessly at the crystal-strewn grounds. How do you fight someone who's rewriting the very definition of love? A memory surfaces. Our first date with Megan. How she spilled wine on her white dress and laughed it off. Now she wears white every day, but it's different, pristine, untouchable, like she's already transformed into something that exists beyond mundane stains and human imperfections. She finds me later, as the afternoon light turns golden. Her bare feet make no sound on the garden path, and for a moment, she looks so much like the woman I married that my heart forgets to be guarded. But when she speaks, her voice carries echoes of Ravi's teachings. "I wanted to explain more clearly," she says, settling beside me on a stone bench. Her hands rest in her lap, fingers intertwined with themselves rather than reaching for mine. What's happening between Ravi and me? It's not about desire or physical connection. It's about expanding beyond what we thought was possible. And our marriage? The words taste bitter. Was that just a limitation to transcend? She turns to me, and I see tears gathering in her eyes. Our marriage was beautiful, she whispers. Is beautiful. But it's like, imagine living your whole life in a lovely room, thinking it was the whole world. Then suddenly the walls become transparent, and you see an infinite universe beyond. Would you choose to keep pretending the room was everything, just because it was comfortable and familiar? Love isn't a prison, Megan. It's a choice, a commitment. But what if commitment itself is just another wall we've built? Her voice grows passionate. Ravi showed me that true love doesn't need boundaries to be real. It can flow like light, touching everything without diminishing its source. I think of all our shared promises, our shared dreams. And what happens to the people who get burned by all that unbounded light? She reaches for my hand then, and the familiar touch sends a sharp pain through my chest. Come to tonight's ceremony, she pleads. Open yourself to the possibility that love can be more than we imagined. Ravi says you're on the edge of a breakthrough. He can see it in your energy field. The mention of Ravi's name makes something crack inside me. Does he see it the same way he saw the potential in you? Is that his specialty? Finding people who are yearning for something more and turning that yearning into devotion. You're reducing something profound to something cynical, she says, but I catch a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. This isn't about devotion to Ravi. It's about expanding our capacity for universal love. Universal love. I repeat, the words hollow. And does universal love pay the mortgage? Does it remember how you take your coffee or hold you when you're sick? Does it know about the scar on your knee from when you fell off your bike in 3rd grade? She stands, her white dress catching the late afternoon light. Those are beautiful things, David. But they're like loving a single drop of water when you could love the entire ocean. As she walks away, her bare feet silent on the grass, I remember our wedding vows. We'd written them ourselves, promising to be each other's anchor, each other's home. Now she's choosing to be infinite, unbounded, belonging to everyone and therefore to no one. The rain finally begins to fall, fat drops that make the crystals scattered through the garden glitter like tears. Somewhere in the mansion, a gong sounds, calling us to another ceremony. Another step in Ravi's carefully choreographed dissolution of everything I thought I knew about love. Kyle appears beside me. Holding an umbrella, he doesn't offer to share. What's the plan? He asks, his investigator's instincts still searching for action, for resolution. But I just watch the rain fall, wondering how to fight someone who's transformed betrayal into transcendence, who's made the very concept of faithfulness seem like a spiritual limitation to overcome. How do you hold on to water that's decided it wants to be vapor? The gong sounds again, insistent, calling us to witness more boundaries dissolving into cosmic light, calling us to transcend the very things that make love human, personal, real, calling my wife further and further into a philosophy that makes infinite love feel like infinite loss. The final ceremony begins at midnight, when the moon hangs directly above the mansion's glass dome. We gather in the conservatory, now transformed into a forest of crystal pillars that catch and fracture the candlelight into countless dancing fragments. The air trembles with anticipation and fear. Megan stands beside Ravi at the center of the circle, her white dress seeming to glow from within. Around her neck hangs a new crystal pendant, larger than the others, pulsing with an inner light that might be a trick of the candles or something more unsettling. The sight of it makes my skin crawl. Tonight, Ravi's voice fills the space like smoke. We complete the transformation. Those who are ready will transcend the last barriers of the ego, becoming one with the infinite love that pervades all existence. His dark eyes find mine across the circle. Those who resist will remain bound by their limitations, prisoners of their earthly attachments. I watch Megan's face as he speaks, searching for any trace of doubt beneath her serene expression. In the flickering light, memories surface like photographs developing in reverse. our first kiss in the rain, slow dancing at our wedding, quiet Sunday mornings tangled in sheets and whispered promises. Each memory seems to fade even as I grasp for it, dissolving into the incense-heavy air. The ceremony begins with a chant that makes the crystal pillars vibrate. Kyle, somewhere to my left, has gone completely still, his investigator's notebook forgotten. The sound builds until it feels like the glass dome above might shatter, raining fragments of sky onto our upturned faces. Then Ravi raises his hands, and silence falls like a blade. "Megan," he says softly, "you have reached the threshold. Are you ready to release the last ties that bind you to your former self?" She steps forward, the crystal at her throat pulsing faster. "I am ready. And you understand that this transformation is irreversible? That the person you were, daughter, wife, individual soul, must die completely for your true self to emerge." "I understand. But I hear it then." The smallest tremor in her voice, a hairline crack in her certainty. Ravi lifts a crystal vessel filled with liquid that catches the moonlight like quicksilver. "Drink," he commands, "and let your final transformation begin." Time slows, stretches like taffy. I see Megan's hands reach for the vessel, see the liquid inside shimmer with impossible colors. And in that stretched moment, I finally understand, really understand, what I'm about to lose. Not just my wife, but the very possibility of the kind of love that stays, that chooses, that builds something solid in a world of shifting shadows. If she drinks, she'll become like light itself, beautiful, untouchable, belonging to everything and therefore to nothing. "Megan." My voice cuts through the heavy air. She turns, the vessel half raised to her lips. "You once told me that love was like quantum entanglement," I say, stepping into the circle. Two particles that remain connected no matter how far apart they move. Remember? Her hands begin to tremble. That was before I understood about universal love. "No." I move closer, feeling Ravi's dark gaze like a weight. "That was when you understood love perfectly. Because quantum entanglement isn't about particles losing their identity to become one with the universe. It's about two distinct beings choosing to remain connected across any distance, against all odds." The vessel in her hands catches moonlight, throws it back in fractal patterns. I see tears begin to gather in her eyes. Universal love sounds beautiful. I continue, my heart pounding. But it's like trying to hug the ocean. You end up drowning in something vast and impersonal. Real love, human love, is about choosing to build something solid together. Something that can weather storms and hold memories and make coffee just the way you like it on Sunday mornings. A single tear escapes, trails down her cheek. The crystal at her throat pulses erratically. "I'm not asking you to stay in a cage," I say softly. "I'm asking you to remember that some boundaries aren't prison walls, they're foundations. The banks of a river that give the water its power and purpose." The vessel begins to slip from her grasp. Ravi steps forward, his serenity cracking. "The ego fights hardest at the moment of its death," he says quickly. "Don't let earthly attachments hold you back from your true potential." But Megan's looking at me now, really looking like she's surfacing from deep water. The crystal pendant flickers, dims. "David." Her voice sounds younger, uncertain, more like herself. "I'm here." I hold out my hand, not grasping, just offering. "I've always been here." The vessel falls, shatters on the floor. The liquid inside evaporates instantly, leaving a pattern like frost on the polished wood. Around us, the other participants begin to stir, as if waking from a shared dream. Megan reaches up, pulls the crystal pendant from her neck. It goes dark completely, becomes just glass and wire. When she takes my hand, her fingers are warm, solid, human. "Take me home," she whispers. We walk out together under the moon, leaving Ravi standing in his circle of broken glass and scattered light. Tomorrow, there will be questions to answer, healing to begin, trust to rebuild. But for now, we are quantum entangled particles finding our way back to each other through the vast, cold spaces of almost loss. Kyle meets us at the car, his investigation forgotten in the face of something more important. The simple miracle of two people choosing, again and again, to remain bound by love's beautiful limitations. As we drive away, the mansion disappears in a mist behind us. The crystal wind chimes sing a final chorus, their music fading into the ordinary sounds of night. Crickets, wind and trees, two hearts beating in sync as they turn toward home. If you enjoy the story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Have a nice day, and see you soon.